Okay.
The meeting is recorded. To continue, okay. All right. Hello. Thank you for inviting me to present. So in this presentation, we're going to consider this 4 parts. The 4th part is very optional. The first part 0, is going to be very short. What exactly is this about? We're talking about multi-language data wrangling and acquisition conversational agents. This is the topic of topics we're going to discuss today. The first part is for the data wrangling workflows. Obviously, data wrangling is coming after the data acquisition, logically and procedurally. But first of all, my work in this field is much more mature. And second, maybe it's more interesting, and there's certain more data science part of it, theory here, but it can be discussed. The data acquisition workflows I have worked on, I still work in progress. I haven't done this I'm in the beginning of that project. It's not useful yet. This project here is fairly useful. The 4th part, if we have time, is going to be discussing the software architecture and principle and design principles employed in order to do this kind of system. And what is the difference, say, using the approach I am using instead of, say, using some of the big frameworks like, say, Alexa or Google Home, which are about making conversational agents. So I'm going to have these 3 panels here. The first panel is with this mind map. The second panel is with the main presentation. I'm going to use Mathematica. And the third panel is with either RStudio or R-based presentations or some other kind of integrated development environment examples. So, I did describe what is this about. There's a big picture of this, and if you ask me why I'm doing this, I'm working on 2 books, and one of them is How to Be a Data Scientist Imposter. And in order to describe the elements in the chapters, or whatever is the message in this book, it turns out that I couldn't just there will be too much code if I want to show the actual know-how, and that software code is going to dilute the message. So that's why I have a separate book called Simplified Machine Learning Workflows, which basically describes how this how the different workflows in machine learning can be simplified in a certain way, certain notation. And that particular notation, what I'm doing is that I basically use some sort of natural language commands in order to produce these workflows. This here I'm going to actually show what is the big picture from one of my previous presentations. And so in order to clarify these statements here, like for example, here you can see I'm using some natural language commands to create a recommender, apply certain functions on it, and then produce some other things. This is another example of making a recommender. This is specifically about using some kind of data. This workflow here, it's about latent semantic analysis and topic extraction, and say classification, which is very, probably most people are familiar with classification in one way or the other. This shows how to do a classifier over the Titanic data. Again, using natural language commands, producing this kind of code, and then, actually seeing the results. So this is what this simplified machine learning workflows is about. At some point, people convince me that I actually need to do, to discuss also data wrangling. Data wrangling does not necessarily belong to machine learning, but most of the time, like say 80% of the time, I actually do spend quite a lot of, time and effort doing data transformations, data wrangling, or, in general data acquisition. So data acquisition here, it's much more specific the way I discuss it. It's basically getting the data from the right data sources. Later on, you can transform it in some way. As I said, logically and operationally, we first acquire the data and then we wrangle it. But in this presentation, I'm going to be discussing data wrangling first. So after each of these branches, I'm going to, in branches in this mind map, meaning after each of these sections, I'm going to ask for questions, but we're kind of small group, so I guess, questions can be asked at any point. So one of the things I mentioned earlier, just going to skip here for why I'm using Mathematica. Well, Mathematica actually has a very natural interface to different external evaluators. So I can use Mathematica notebooks to demonstrate different, the input and output and operations in different languages. The only thing close to this is RStudio with Reticulate, right? With the package which lets you connect to Python almost, natively. RStudio, as far as I know, they try to be like basically probably the best IDE for Python. So you can see here, this is a HTML version of a presentation made in RStudio in R, right? I'm using Reticulate. If you use Reticulate, hook it up, right? I can make this kind of hookups here. Well, in this particular case, I mean, as I said, I do with Mathematica, it's just the notebooks and the notebook technology is much more mature. And also I can make some of the interfaces, I can hook them up in a much better way. But first of all, why, like we're basically here in this first part of the talk, and I'm going to describe what is the goal and why exactly we're doing this. What is the motivation? Any questions at this point?
Yeah, I have two questions. First, what parser are you using for the DSL?
Very, very, very important question. Thank you for asking. So I'm using Raku. Raku is a language which is created by Larry Wall, who created Perl. So Raku was also known a few years ago as Perl 6, but this brought lots of confusion. And so basically right now I am doing most of my presentations, most of my parsers in Raku. These parsers, this is the big thing, right? This is there's a parser and a grammar design. And I'm going to, since you asked, I'm going to jump ahead here. I'm going to move to one of this. Just a moment.
Well,
so here, in all of these presentations, right? I do have a diagram which describes this. So in the notebook cells, you see, if I put some Mathematica notebook cell, I do have some code which redirects the inputs to Raku. Raku has some packages, say for data wrangling and etc., and I'm getting the results. After I get the result in this way, I might go to the external evaluator in the Mathematica notebook, be that Julia, Python, or whatever it is, right? Further about this is that I do have two types of linguistic activities. One is making the software packages for these monads and etc., right? What I was describing earlier. The other one is making the grammars for the natural language commands. So this here, what I was showing earlier, right? It's the big picture demo, which I'm not sure where I put it. Yeah. So in this big picture demo, this pipeline you see here, right, for making the classifier, this belongs to the left here, to this yellow blocks here. This is how I make the monadic software packages. This kind of pipeline you see here. You can see this kind of interface is being maintained, right? Then on the right, I'm making grammars, right? This part here, the green blocks, where the grammars which are being created here, right? Grammars which are able to parse this kind of commands. So when I say make document term matrix with no stemming, right? This particular command is being translated into this code. And so, the actual package, right? If I go to it, right? It's so I'm going to use I'm going to show it here, right? So I'm going to go to my repositories, going to just moment. So somewhere here, so you can see a bunch of Raku packages. Somewhere here, I do actually want to find the related semantic analysis package. So because this was what I was showing in the background. So the related semantic analysis package weighs this domain-specific language grammar, right? So this grammar kind of knows what are the big picture commands, like say creation command, data transformation command, making a document term matrix, right? So what I was showing here, sorry, in the background here, what I'm showing here, this command, make document term matrix.
Oh, Mr. Harvin, could you mute? Thank you.
So this make document term matrix with no stemming command, right, is being parsed, is being here somewhere. Let me find the command, right? Yeah, this is how it is being structured. This here, it's the Raku, it's made in Raku, right? Did I answer your question? I mean, I can discuss this further, but you know.
Oh yeah, that answers my question. The second question I had is when you use an external evaluator, what happens when there are no direct mappings between the concepts of two different programming languages?
Right. So this is exactly why we're having this, you know, separation, right? Dichotomy, right? I have the software packages, I develop them separately for each language. In Mathematica and now I have the same, more or less the same software monadic packages. And but to some extent, if I make the grammar or if I make the general type of workflow, if I know what it is, usually this is what it is heavy in the design. If you know enough programming, you know, it's like not that hard after you know what it is, you know, to program it in the corresponding language. But this is what I'm doing right now. I basically, knowing what is the workflow, I translate it into different languages. I'm not sure, do I make sense here or it's not clear? Like concretely here, right? This related semantic analysis workflows, right? This part here. These actions, you can see I have actions in Wolfram language, this is Mathematica, R and Python, right? So if I go say to Python, so basically let's take this make document term matrix command. You see, this is basically generating the code for making the document term matrix. I mean, I do know how my commands or what is the sequence of commands, how they're supposed to line up. So after I have figured out what are the parameters, do you want stemming, do you want whatever, right? I mean, I can program for the different languages. I can concretely program what is the reaction. If I show you how it is in R, right? So here the document term makes absolutely the same thing. It's just, it's just slightly different syntax here. The document term matrix parameters, right? This particular specification, which is about the stemming, do we stem the words? Do we, use stop words? What exactly is being used? Obviously they're kind of treated separately, but this, what you see here, this organization is something that comes up with the, with Raku using grammars as a first-class citizens, right? So Raku itself uses grammars to develop Raku further. And because of this, one of the reasons I'm using it. So to be multi-language with Raku, it's not that hard. For me, the hard part is actually, and repeating myself here, but for me, the hard part is figuring out what exactly is the workflow. After we know the workflows, even if I don't know certain language, I can either learn it or delegate the programming. Am I answering the question or am I answering something else?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not familiar with the external evaluators of Mathematica, but I guess from my understanding, the external evaluator is actually writing Python code or R code or Julia code. It's not about mapping Mathematica code over to those languages, right?
No. Yes, right. Very good question. I see now what you're talking about. I'm sorry. This is you're not asking about my approach. You're asking about Mathematica. Yes, you're correct. Mathematica delegates to external evaluators. Those external evaluators, they do use some 0MQ, I think it's called, a package 0MQ, right? Which is a certain protocol in which you can, it looks like, very intimately start a session with some external evaluator. So you don't need to, like my Raku external evaluation right now, every time I send a command to Raku, I basically start a new session and, you know, load packages and etc. That's actually quite, you know, computationally heavy, not desirable. Right now, Mathematica, if I want to use Julia or Python or whatever, I need to, usually they configured fairly, you know, by default, but if I haven't configured it, it is going to prompt me to configure the 0MQ connection in some way or the other. Like I can, we don't need to, I mean, honestly, this can be a huge topic, right? But for example, here in Julia, I want to, so this is the Julia code, right? I want to pre-install, preload some packages in my Julia external evaluator. Right now, this is telling me, look, you have not configured Julia. I know about Julia 1.6, but what you have here, it just doesn't, you know, it's not the external evaluator I'm seeing. With R, I didn't have this problems. I was just, you know, went right away. But right now, Mathematica ships with R, right? I mean, I did use some external evaluation. With Python, again, I haven't exactly, I need to do some kind of additional setup for Python. But to your other point, right? There is actually packages which translate Python inside Mathematica and the other way around. There is a package which translates Mathematica inside Python. So if you want to transfer between sections in that way, right, you can actually do it. Right now, it's not as far as I can tell, right? It's just transferring the elements like with this kind of low-level C protocol. In order to translate Python expressions into, just let me find this here. So in order to explain basically somebody was asking how I can use some expression in Mathematica and send it to Python. And I'm saying, look, here, this can be done in a very ad hoc manner, right? But somebody else here was saying, look, I mean, there is a package here, right? Simply parsing Mathematica, you just, you know, use that, and then you actually can talk to Python in this way. There is an effort to do the mapping between the languages closer, right? And yes, some things don't map, right? But some things do map. All right, so this was a long explanation. Hopefully it was useful. Okay. Did I answer your question, or, you know?
You did, and I have more, but at this point, I think I'm derailing your presentation. So maybe I'll just ask later.
Okay, this is good, especially if the others don't mind. So, well, I mean, what exactly is the motivation here, right, for doing this data wrangling? I mean, going back to this here, right? Why I'm doing data wrangling workflows, right? So as I was mentioning, there's the big picture about simplifying machine learning workflows. Data wrangling does not necessarily, and data acquisition for that matter, does not necessarily belong to machine learning, but machine learning engineers, machine learning practitioners, data scientists, they do spend quite a lot of time doing data wrangling. And so, so one of the things here, and it is actually motivation here, it's pretty close to what Kevin asked. I do want to rapidly specify data wrangling workflows using natural language commands, but to some extent, my main motivation is not so much to use natural language commands, but more like, I know what the workflow is, but, you know, moving it to different packages, different languages, it's always somewhat of a challenge, right? And I'm going to use opportunistically my presentation here because I do have a ready example. I mean, I saw it here, like there is already example here. I mean, you can see here I'm using Star Wars. Should I zoom here a little? I'm using Star Wars, right? And I'm saying take the Star Wars, keep the columns name, homeworld, mass, and height, right? And then arrange, sort it, arrange by mass, height, and name. This is fairly simple, but what exactly you do in these different languages and different packages? I mean, actually, so this is, you can see on the right, this is tidyverse, right? In tidyverse, all of these columns is the same code, right? In tidyverse, we take Star Wars, we select the names, name, column, mass, and height. This is what says keep the columns, blah. And then we say arrange by mass and height. Great. Now, what exactly you do in Julia or in Python or in RBase? Because, I mean, R has at least 3 or 4 popular packages for data wrangling. This is RBase, rtidyverse, and rtidyverse, and there is also data table. I don't know, do you know or care about but R has also the data table package, right? Now, Mathematica, same thing. I mean, I know what I want to do here, but it is the actual symbols, the actual idiosyncrasies of these packages. What is exactly is how do you actually specify from language to language, from packages within a language? They can differ quite a lot. And so this is my main motivation. The other is that, of course, this kind of efforts, right, if they're done correctly, they do bring the benefit of having having more insight and learning more about this system and these activities. So I talked about the external evaluators. Although I mentioned this to be conversational agents, they're not conversational agents yet. They're more like single command chatbots, I would say. But it's not that hard if I have figured out how to respond to the single commands, right? It's not that hard to start making dialogues. And the other is that this is very important, actually. My target audience is not some random people off the street. It's actually data scientists or engineers who want to be any kind of practitioner, in the sciences, in management, or whatever it is, who at some point, become in their regular job, they become data scientists, or put the data scientist hat and want to practice, to do some kind of data wrangling in that. For example, or people who are data analysts and want to become data scientists, and etc. This here, for this machine learning workflows, and particularly for this data wrangling workflow, conversational agents, this is my target audience. They do have some technological thinking, and they do know more or less. They do understand the main concept of what is going on. So I think because it's already half an hour, I'm not going to make too many interactive examples. I'm going to make some, but there's this ideal end result, right? In which basically right now my ideal end result, let me do this, right? I'm starting a new notebook, right? And I'm going to zoom here, and I convert it into this DSL mode, right? And now I'm going to use, I'm going to specify a command, right? I'm going to say use df Star Wars, and say select species and height. Actually, instead of select, let's say group by species. And then say counts, right? So if I do this, I mean, if I figured out, do I have, let me see. First of all, hopefully I do have, I don't see species here, right?
I think your group by is the misspelled.
Right, but this is supposed to handle group. Okay, I thought it's supposed to handle misspellings, and I see homeworld, right? So I'm going to do homeworld here.
Does your DSL use 0MQ also to create a new Raku
process? No, this is in my to-do list, right? It's So instead of using 0MQ, I'm using actually a service. I made a web service, right? Right now, I'm not using a web service. What you see right now, this here instantiates, starts a new Raku process in the, basically like in the command line. It just runs a, iOS process in the background right now.
Does that mean you can't hold state, like object here will disappear?
Correct. Yes. Yeah. It doesn't hold states. This actually, it's not that bad as it sounds, right? Because there's I do actually like this approach of impera, not the cloths do not have impera, right? So you have the clothing, but you don't have the thing that mans it, right? It makes the whole system very lightweight. The other is that it's not exactly like that. I mean, I can maintain, because I'm interacting with Mathematica right now, through Mathematica. Mathematica actually, when this actual command, which is being used to redirect the call to Raku, it can actually know the user ID. Because it can know the user ID, I can store state in it. So I can use actually the state inside Mathematica and do something further. This is a very interesting question. It's actually for the data acquisitions, we need to discuss this, and it is part of the whole. It is part of the whole system. It's not here for this data wrangling though. I'm not doing it like that, right? I mean, I'm not doing it like that because I can go, as I said, I can go with this minimal, not so not very lightweight type of package, right? So just to kind of repeat what I was showing here, right? If I run this code, it's going to produce this Mathematica code, right? And from this Mathematica code, if I run it, I'm going to see the group by species and etc. I'm talking about the ideal end result. If I do this, and if I say that my DSL target is actually tidyverse, right? So in iTidyverse, this should produce our code, right? And if I execute it, I guess you need to believe me what this is. It should be very similar. Well, I'm not going to fight it, but presumably this data frame, this object which was being produced here, it should be something very similar to what we see here. And so this type of maybe I should do, in order to do what I'm describing here, I should do ungrouping, right? And do the pipeline. And so I mean, I'm not going to fight it too much, but yeah, I thought this is going to work. It doesn't. Anyway, this is more or less how I see this system being used. We specify the language, we specify the target, right? And this different, I can produce, using the same natural language specification, I can produce this different codes in different programming languages. So as I said, I don't want to do that many interactive examples because I mistype and misspell, and we can go on and on. But more or less, this is what is being described here in this slide. And yes, this is this is how I see it right now. Now, what I was mentioning earlier, right? In this Mathematica notebook cells, I do have some code, I do have some package which knows how to redirect the input which is given into the notebook cells into this process. And you can see study outs to the error, right? So this is a system process, right? Very Linux based. This is in Mac. I think is working the same in Windows. Then I'm invoking Raku. So I'm invoking Raku each time I make in my implementation right now. I'm invoking Raku each time I do evaluate a cell. If you use 0MQ and if you use whatever setups between the external evaluators with Mathematica, this is not necessary. This is happening once, and you interact with that session with some sort of TCP/IP protocol, which is very fast. So, but this is what is happening right now. And so this here, it's more for the data scientist type of data scientist part of the talk, the data wrangling, not so much the software architecture. And I'm going to go through this diagram. In some sense, we need to envision this type of workflows in order to make a sound software design, because the sound software design, it's going to rely on certain assumptions, certain invariants. And so obviously we need to figure out which of these assumptions and invariants and what kind of targets of audience and data we have in order to kind of start the development or make any kind of reasonable effort for development. So I'm taking some data. The data acquisition the data acquisition part of the workflow is just being tucked in this blue block here. But this part of the presentation is about data wrangling. So I'm getting the data. After I'm getting the data, I kind of try to evaluate, does it have the summary? Does it have the shape? Does it have the qualities? Is it convenient for me to use? If it is not, then it does need data transforming. If it is convenient enough, we use it, export it and assign it to some variable or whatever, right? Now here, this group of orange blocks is the so-called split, transform, combine pattern, right? So all of these orange blocks, they're optional. They don't, if you think you should do it, you do it. If not, you just go to the other block. So what is this? I mean, as the name of the pattern, split, transform, combine, we split the data. We split it, and then we do some transformations, and we combine the transformed results. So obviously, before that, we can now also filter the data in some way before splitting. The splitting here can be done both by rows. We can split the rows into subsets, or we can split the columns into subsets. Then we transform the individual groups. Like say what I was showing earlier here, right? In this particular example, it's exactly this, right? I'm taking my data, I'm splitting it by one of the elements, right? By one of the data elements here, which is homeworld, right? And with species too. I'm splitting it by homeworld, and then I'm making the counts, right? And then after I make the counts, I'm combining the whole thing into one. And you can see all of the elements here. Although this is in Mathematica, it should be clear even if you don't know Mathematica. We split into homeworld. We map to each of the splitted parts. We map this length, function, and then the result is being combined into a data set. If we look into, say, Python, it's exactly that, right? It's doing exactly that. All right, so now after we have done this, we might actually go further and do some reshaping of the data, like contingency tables, cross tabulations, converting into long form and wide form. This split, transform, combine in the R universe, in the R ecosystem, was introduced by this article by Hadley Wickham. Hadley Wickham is one of the leading scientists of RStudio. Although this is more characterizing the R community. This type of splitting, transforming, and combining, this is standard, in doing, say, parallel programming. If you do some parallel programming across multiple processors or microprocessor cores, right? You're doing exactly that. Imagine some embarrassingly parallel process, right? Some embarrassingly parallel algorithm. You separate the data by the number of processors. Each processor transforms it, and then you combine the results in some way. If you look at how MapReduce, this parallel combine in Mathematica is the same as MapReduce, or MapReduce in say Google and etc. And just by the name MapReduce, right? This is more or less a standard way, standard pattern in functional programming languages. All right, so this is the general, this diagram describes all of the workflows you envision. Something very important I didn't mention yet. My data, the data I concentrate upon, is data frames or tabular data, right? This is tabular data. So it's either, tables like matrices, can be represented as matrices, or it is a list or a dictionary of data frames. So it's either simple collections of tabular data, like lists of data tables, data frames, or just one data frame, right? So this is my, okay. So so knowing the workflows and knowing the data, we should be able to start doing the software architecture. But I would like to mention that obviously this approach can be used for other computational workflows. Like my last presentation at Orlando Machine Learning and Data Science was actually about COVID-19 simulation, epidemiological modeling. And so here, this is basically showing how this, some kind of computational workflow like that can be specified. This code here, this natural language code, produced this software code, and from this software code, I made this simulations results. So yeah, I mean, basically, I already have mentioned this in many ways, and in order to, I'm going to speed up a little bit for the rest of the slides. But for example, here for this commands, right, use the Star Wars, group by species and counts. You can see these are the results we get with the different languages. Now, if you don't know what are monads or what are pipelines, this is what monads and pipelines are. It just simplifies the code. So basically, like say Julia or Python, you can see I have some variable obj, right? And I assign to it something, right? Then I do something else and assign to it and so forth, right? Now, this here, the fact that this appears on the left-hand side and on the right-hand side in this manner, right? I mean, in a sense, it's like a sugar code, whatever, right? Sugar coding, so similarly here, like we can actually see that maybe this is redundant. So this is exactly what this operator is doing here. It's basically figuring out that, okay, well, we start with something. Instead of making this sequence of assignments and, going back and forth, right, is specifying the objects on the left and the right-hand side. Why not just, make this, pipeline composition? So basically, this is it. I actually want to mention, this is more specifically to Mathematica, but so Mathematica here is something very simple. Like I want to use this and I want to rename species as var1, right? I mean, you can see how many variables I need to type in. I mean, if you look at species was the last column. Right now it's var1, but this is not just for Mathematica. Other languages have the same problem too. Sometimes some very simple operations, they need to be replaced with, something very simple conceptually. It needs to be, you spend quite a lot of, non-trivial amount of symbols and strokes to actually produce this code. So, all right. So this is something I mentioned several times already, but I'm going to very briefly go through this diagram. We have some problem domain. We make the software packages for the problem domain. This is, I'm using Mathematica or R or Python. I'm making packages for this problem domain. I separately figure out what are my commands, how I can verbalize what I want to do in this domain, and I make the corresponding natural language grammars. At some point, the two are being married. This is the single line interpreters. And at some point, we can actually go further and make this second order commands or whatever, right, in which we have dialogues or in which we consolidate quite a lot of these elements together. And at that point also, we can hook it up to something like Alexa or Google Home, Siri, whatever, right? In order this kind of system to work, there's a very serious effort when it comes to unit testing, and all of these modules, they have to be designed to fail, right? Fail is your normal, it's your normal mode of operation. If you use any integrated development environment, like say IntelliJ or Eclipse, right, which does code highlighting, like syntax-based code highlighting, or it does any kind of completion of code. It's very similar to what I'm describing here. Normally, in these integrated development environments, the corresponding plugins, they work into the, basically having incomplete or bad code, they actually fail constantly, right? There is no complete, most of the time when people are typing, it's like the code is wrong. They need to complete it. So it's kind of similar like that here. This actually, when this kind of system is designed, the connections, both the conceptual and the software wise, the different elements, components, and the connections between them can be very complicated. So rigorous testing, designing to fail from the get-go. And so I described parsers, like grammars and parsers that we're doing this. Rigorous testing, of course, like say all of this, like what, I mean, if I want to show, like, for example, these are some commands, like I use for, I have unit tests for, say, tidyverse, right? But I also have unit tests for some of the other commands and etc. The other is that here, like concretely on the R side, I do actually have quite a lot of dedicated packages, like data packages or test packages just for this, right? And I do make different test files in different languages. Like say, this is testing more or less, again, unit testing, but in Mathematica, and just for completion, I can show you my pandas unit test. This is the shortest because I don't know Python that well, or I don't care that much, but in a sense, since I assume most of the people in this in the audience know about Python, but you can see I am testing actually exactly what is supposed to happen. If I have this natural language command after the parsing, after the how this is being translated into code and then it's being executed, I do expect this, the corresponding outputs to be equivalent. All right, so so here these are some examples of some more complicated commands. Like say, I'm not going to go through this, but I mean here, for example, like say you want to group in a by certain variable, and then you want to make summaries, with several variables. As I said, this can be fairly complicated. You see both the mean and the median being here. Obviously, I can use something else too, right? I mean, I can say, first of all, this should be clever enough to understand, my separation of commands. But you can see if I add a bunch of functions here, each of these are going to be concatenated, and I'm going to get the corresponding summarization here. As I said, I'm going to go further, somewhat faster with some of these examples, trivially to make.
That's it.
Trivially to make joins between commands, and yeah, cross tabulation. I mean, again, this is actually part of this. Let me see. Okay, well, at some point I was showing some diagram, and I'm going to show it again here, right? This is the data wrangling command workflows. Just a moment. I guess here. All right, I lost it, I guess. All right, so I'm not going to fight it, but somewhere in this initially I was saying, but we go through the standard workflow, and then we make this data reshaping. I'm going to make one more attempt into this separate presentation which I made you now. Like what I'm talking about is after we have made the transformations, we do this this reshaping of the data in one way or the other. So this here is just a simple, as I said, cross tabulation. So this is part of the package. This is tested, and there's some of the discussion we had earlier. It's about because I said it's a single line interpreter, and it doesn't have much of context and state. That's not entirely true. Like if it does have some state awareness. When I give it this bunch of commands, it does know what already group by has been applied, and the second group by, it's not going to be on the groups produced by species. It's actually going to flatten what you see here with this join. It's when you see the second group by command, it's going to flatten the previous ones, and then it's going to make a new group by homeworld. So this here, this is just simpler to do it in this way, and it does kind of make sense. I do hear this actually quite often when I discuss this data wrangling workflows, and I do agree with this statement, right? When people tell me my data wrangling is too complicated for this, for too complicated for, for some kind of relatively simple diagram like that, or sometimes for me it's just faster, say, to make a direct loop between the columns and the variables and whatnot. Yeah, sure. But there's several reasons for this, especially when it comes to tabular data, right? This kind of streamlined approach, it is standard. It can be standardized. It can be easily communicated. It can be always deployed. Even if it produces slightly longer code, it's always, using the same standard elements. The other is what it is maybe like, in my opinion, around 70% of all of the data wrangling workflows, they can be actually described with this, right? Different people do, work in different problem domains. So, but in the things I'm doing, and I have pretty eclectic, interest when it comes to data science. 70% of the time, I am actually living in this kind of workflows. So this complicated workflow might be potentially very interesting. The only thing I'm going to say here, and I'm not going to go through all of the elements here. This is the Anscombe dataset, right? So basically, it shows 4 different data sets in which different statistical parameters, like say standard deviation, mean, and etc., are the same. But you see, this data is given in a very kind of contrived way in some sense, right? It's kind of like none of these data sets, they're not grouped together. How concretely, if I want to make a plot between what is in the X coordinate and Y coordinate, what I do concretely with this? And you can see the way this data set has been organized. Basically, the data set itself and the coordinate, they have been conflated. They have been combined into the column names. And so this particular workflow here, it just produces, it deals with this exactly, right? It basically makes the actual separation. It deals with the actual separation of the variables, and I can specify this using, these verbal commands. So here, this is the concrete incantation in Mathematica, how it is being done. Now, after I have done this, I should be able to make the plots, because after things are being in long form, then it's much easier to filter and do the corresponding plots and etc. One of the key elements here is that we're converting this into long form. You see these long forms and wide forms. We're converting them into long form, and then the variable names, they become data. This is a very neat trick in which the metadata or the variable names become data, and they can be treated as data. The long form and the wide form are the other transformations I'm talking about in this diagram. All right, so I'm going to finish up this handling misspellings I was talking about. This, obviously, if I can do this for programming languages, I should be able to do this to other languages. Like say, like here you see examples in Bulgarian and Spanish. If I go to my app presentation, here you can see this this workflow being translated into Bulgarian, Korean, and Spanish. So I'm going to discuss this at length later, but at this point, I'm going to say that I have finished this part, and it wasn't at all 20 minutes. It was more like, say, 40 minutes. So any questions at this point?
Yeah, where are joins in the split apply combine paradigm?
They're combined. I see it as a combine or reshaping. And a very good question. I don't, it really, yeah, basically I see it as a combine, right? So.
Okay, but you have joins in your DSL, right?
Yeah, I did actually have a slide, which probably I went through too quickly, but yeah, of course.
I saw it.
Yeah, it just, no question, right? This is, I would say, the split transform combine pattern is probably of third importance. If someone is new to data wrangling, right? I would say cross tabulation is the most important one, cross tabulation. Then joins is the second, the second most important concept. And this is more like data wrangling for data scientists or statisticians type of thing. And then is the split transform combine pattern. So
yeah. How would you extend custom R code or Mathematica code that you wanted to integrate with the DSL?
There's several ways to do it, but I personally, right now I go to this Raku packages and I put a new action. This is, by the way, I would say like a standard thing I have to do. Now, I'm not sure what you're asking, but in a sense, this extension here in this diagram I was showing with the software architecture, right? It's not something. You basically come up with a new command. This is I would say this is the main workflow. You come up with a new command, and after you come up with this new command, you program, you figure out what exactly are the elements there, and then you program the corresponding retrieval operation. Like say last time you were showing some example with cryptocurrencies, right? Which was kind of detrimental apparently for my work on this, because I started doing quite a lot of stuff with cryptocurrencies in order to figure out some some things, right? Like say, for example, I'm going to show you like say this what is it, cryptocurrency data, right? And I want say cryptocurrency data for BTC, and then I want it say from to be from January 1st 2021. Ideally, this is going to produce some time series, right? And so it's like after it kind of goes through whatever update and etc. Now, the thing is that I'm using Yahoo Finance and also data Bitcoinity sources. So right now it's actually parsing a bunch of those. So, but to make the point here, like, I mean, this is basically it, right? Now, you come up with say some kind of commands like this, right? If I want this to be like say, okay, I'm not going to do the different Coinbase exchanges or whatever, but if I want this to be from Ethereum, right? This is the Ethereum and etc. Now, do you actually combine? Say, do you have combinations of those, right? So all of these considerations, right? After they come to, Ether is here, Bitcoin is here. After you come up with this, right? I do make some kind of DSL type of design, and this is exactly what I'm working on, right? So this is the time series data retrieval, which say for stocks, or for cryptocurrencies or whatever, right? It's like General Electric stocks or BTC or whatever. I do need to come up with a variable, like say here in my part here, I might say, look, I actually want volume. I don't want price, right? And so whatever it happened, I misspelled volume, right? So okay, so this shows me the volume, right? So I do come up with what kind of things I want to have here. One example command, right, is to say something like let's say here, right, give me a GE volume, trading volume from say, I don't know, like nice since 2021 January 12, whatever, right? Some sort of command like that. So I come up with this kind of commands, right? Probably a dozen, and I try to see, do they actually fit this kind of patterns? Can I specify all of this, right? Can I specify time intervals? How I specify currency? To some of the questions which were asked earlier, maybe I don't want to do this in one command, in one sentence. I need to split this into several sentences, right? In which I'm specifying but I want a GE stock, and then I want, the trading volume from that stock, and I want from particular source and so forth, right? After I come up with this, I actually would know what are the elements which I need to extract and how exactly I need to query the data. Basically, this here, I already implemented it, right? I have already implemented this kind of query mechanism. I just need to hook this up, to the actual actions and parsers and etc. This here, there's a this is my approach into that how this is handled, and I think this is more related to this diagram here with this domain specific languages. I do know how to factor out certain common functionalities and reuse it between the different modules. Right now, as I said, for this data wrangling, I basically figure out which kind of languages I want to target, what kind of packages in those languages. And usually after I figure out one of those, I can very easily program the others. Okay, this was a long explanation. Did I answer at least a little bit your question?
Yeah, I have more questions, but I think we should just move on. I'll ask them later if we have time.
Okay, so, all right, so, okay, so the data acquisition, actually this is going to be much shorter. I promise I'm going to do it 15 minutes. And so this is, as I said, work in progress. I'm going to switch to my data wrangling, data acquisition thing, which.
Yeah, actually my questions are architecture related, so I thought it was the final section anyway.
Okay, good. So, all right, I'm going to show a couple of, I'm going to do this in a slightly different manner, right? The presentation here, and this is going to be distracting. So I'm going to just go to the latest part here. And so I'm going to put this notebook. This is, so I do want to make data acquisition workflows. This means that it can be interpreted in several ways, but what is happening here, right, is that I do have some data, or I have some recommendation system. I know how to make recommendation system for data sets, right? So this here, it's I have, like, say 111 data sets, and this 111 data sets, they have different properties, right? Like, say, names, like what kind of data type it is, like, say, is it time series, is it survival data, event data, multivariable, and etc. What are the dimensions? What are the columns? Breakdown of the columns, in what kind of areas of application they might have, and description, right? So many of these data sets you see here, you actually can find the corresponding, like, say, Fisher cats or Fisher iris. These are famous, statistical data sets. We can find them also in R or Python or wherever, right? And so there's actually one professor who maintains quite a lot of these packages into a specific repository, and I also have made the corresponding R recommender, right? And so if I show you what it is, so this here, what you see is for the previous one was for Mathematica. This is actually something I take from this data sets. So this is a repository. As I said, he maintains this repository with approximately 1,500 data sets. They can be, I'm not sure, is this, yeah, right. You can see all of these data sets from different packages. They do come with some parameters and etc. So again, similarly to what I was showing in Mathematica, I'm having this, part here, and this was detrimental, I guess. So yeah, let me ingest it. So yeah, we have the different packages. So, and you can see there are approximately 1,700 different data sets, and they are characterized with different types of data. For these data sets, for this, for both R and Mathematica, right? I'm creating recommenders. At some point here, you can, let me show an example. I have this, just a moment. Yeah, I mean, I have this recommender, which if I say recommend by, column type to be character and column heading to be age, right? What kind of data sets I'm going to get, recommended data sets. And I see here, like say, Hawaiian Island chain, hotspot, potassium, argon, ages. Great, and I can see what I have. They have character columns, and apparently some of them are about age. And if I show the actual DAG hotspots, right, age is one of the columns. So I do have recommenders which I can use, which I can hook up to a conversational agent with which I'm making data acquisition workflows. Now I'm trying to find that particular data acquisition workflows DSL examples. This is again, some of this is related to the architectural discussions we have earlier. But what you see here is that I have made two types of recommenders, right? I do know the users, I do know the variables, I do know the data sets. I have inventory of data sets, and I have another database in which I know how different users have been acquiring different data, in what kind of in what kind of way, right? And so somewhere here, this recommender example, I'm actually generating some randomly. I'm generating a data acquisition data set. I have 3 users, and these three users with this random user is being assigned, they have been utilizing data sets, at different times. And so there's an action like acquire, analyze, or something else. I'm using some function here for recommending, for creating random data sets. And you can see, I have 3 number of users. I have the acquisition. I have generated acquisition data for 90 days, and there's some distribution here. So my actions, either acquisition, like acquire, analyze, or query, and with this kind of corresponding probabilities or whatever. So okay, so now after I have this, right? This part here, what I'm showing, right? It characterized. I do have everything here. I do know what data sets I have in my inventory. I do know my users, and I know what kind of data sets the users have been doing. I'm making recommenders. I want to respond to commands like say, like when they say, I recommend a data set to analyze, right? I can look into what are the analysis data sets and to basically make this analysis. Now you can see this is something related to what Kevin asked earlier. Let me actually make this is an introspection query. This introspection query is plotting a timeline of the data acquisition of a certain user, right? The thing is that I have specified a user, this here. Now, if I reevaluate this command here, this username is going to has been remembered from the previous specification. And now when I'm doing recommendations, right, from this generic command, recommend data sets to analyze, right, I am actually recommending something for this user. This here, it's probably closer to a conversational agent in a sense, like say, if I try to make a live demo, right, and if I do say, recommend data to acquire. So this is going to produce, or not, dated, well. And no, this is not going to, yeah, it should recognize misspellings, but apparently it gets too confused with this. And so right now, basically, if my conversational agent, if the speech to text, device can figure out relatively correctly what I'm saying, I should be able to produce, produce some meaningful, some text being able to be parsed and produce this code, which actually is for the user, which have been specified earlier. Although these grammars and parsers, they're somewhat aware of misspellings, I have not spent, although I have spent quite a lot of time, having the mechanism in place. It's another kind of level of unit testing for me to actually figure out what we just saw shouldn't be happening. Nevertheless, if I say dated, right, this if I say date, this should we can say that, you know, we actually can get a result. To be hopefully I'm going to if I misspell acquire, I'm going to show that, you know, right. So for example, I mean, there's some kind of a mechanism which figures out misspellings, but it's just I haven't tuned it, and I haven't, you know, it's kind of, you know, second wave or third wave of priority to produce this. Something I already showed is how I make introspection queries, right? Like say, you know, when is the last time analyzed time series data, right? So presumably this actually says for the user we have had in mind when they really analyze the data, and you can see this is say June 23rd or whatever. If we look into this timeline, this is the plot the timeline of data acquisition for that user. You know, it's like we basically get this type of breakdown. If I want to see all of the users, right, what they're doing, I should be able to specify something like this, right? And then yeah, it's basically evaluating it, but presumably for all of the users here, I can see the timelines. If I go back to my diagram, and I'm going to kind of wrap up this data acquisition part. If I go back to this, okay, where is this now? All right, here. Well, I'm trying to find my Aquamax. Okay, here. So in this particular part, right? If I'm going to zoom out a little bit. So when I follow, you know, do the implementations and the different actions and etc., right? I do actually have certain plans about this, what exactly is supposed to be done. Like say, you know, how, you know, I do want to deal with data quality. I want to have a, you know, grammars for specifying the generation of random data, like what I was showing earlier for generating this random data to make the tests for this implementation. There's some more comprehensive ingredient commands I need to do. The general big picture about this, right, is that if I go into this part here, it's like there's several types of components I'm using for, you know, for this data acquisition conversational agent, and I have done fair amount of some kind of ground analysis of how exactly this is supposed to look like, for what kind of things, you know, it's going to be utilized. And so here, you know, this is the last thing I'm going to discuss on this, but I do actually have some kind of you know, breakdown of different data sources, what kind of data specifications I'm going to have, be that from formats or expected shapes or whatever expected sizes. Then there's certain very important element here, which I should have figured out to discuss earlier. But this is how we actually understand metadata. So in my mind map here, it's I do need to deal with metadata in one way or the other. I do need to know what, for example, if somebody says, I want time series data, I want bike store data, I need to be able to recognize this. One of the things I'm doing for this, the data interpretation, which helps for the entities and variables, I'm using some metadata site called schema. I think it's called schema.org, right? And this schema.org, they claim to be supported by quite a lot of the big companies, right? And they do have a GitHub repository in which I can actually get certain types of metadata and analyze it. I mentioned several times, this is the last time, but this is really important. So I'm going to actually show the study on the metadata, how it looks like. So metadata.org, they do maintain they do maintain probably like say 1,500 different types of data, right? And so you can see the label, short description, and some parent concept. So using this information, I can actually try to browse this, like I can make this graph of the different dependencies. Like somewhere here, if I try to zoom, we can see, like, say, we have, like, say, physical activity, exercise plan, whatever, right? I mean, we have lifestyle modification, so forth, right? I mean, we do care, like, something. This is more about data types. I have, like, say, a thing, and this thing can be apparently, say, some numerical thing, right? Like, say, some number or some entity, and this entity is like, Boolean, etc. So this is actually important. What I do with this is I do, and I'm going to show some of my Raku code here. I do make this separate packages for named entity recognition, specifically for named entity recognition. So when I do these packages, for example, here, if I want to parse certain elements, like, say, Foster City, Titanic, time series, numerical, and etc. This is something this system knows about, right? This is something which it's going to be recognized and interpreted in some way. I use this large data set, relatively large, right? But all of these metadata types we're discussing, they're basically a CSV file here. This CSV file here is onboarded, and it's used to do named entity recognition. When I make the actual grammars, right, the actual parsing of the in the data acquisition workflows. So here, and let me just close some of these files. I'm going to go to these examples here. So somewhere here, if I say, look, I want, let me see, right? For example, I do want, I'm going to use some of these examples here. This should be able to interpret the different elements here, right? And so, like, when I say how many times I acquired hierarchical data in the last 2003 months, right? I mean, obviously I'm being facetious here, but if I say, like, say, let's put this to something more meaningful, right? So what is this going to do? It's going to understand the different elements. It understands that this is an introspection query. It figures out that this is hierarchical data, and hierarchical data is being it's one of these data quality specs, and etc. And this is an entity data type, and entity data type name, hierarchical. And from this, I actually can produce the actual code, which is being generated here in the background. What we see, it is using, this information, what was here. Now, to hierarchical data, there is no concrete reaction from this, but you can see that the dates themselves, right, they should kind of be approximately, close to 23 months. So, all right. So this was my my data acquisition workflows, and I guess the last section. I mean, I can answer questions for this, but my last section is going to be blended with the questions.
I think my questions are more related to part 4, because I want to ask about the server and how coupled the DSL is with the server.
Mm-hmm. Should I talk about it now?
Unless anyone else has other questions.
Okay.
I do have one question. You had a cell where, I mean, your introspection are like telling me the last time I queried, and then it translates that, or it recommends a command to run based on that. Is that the sequence to sequence model that backs that?
Sequence to sequence models for what?
Like, how do you get the recommended DSL command from, like, the natural language command, right? I think I saw a cell where you said, like, I want to query something, and then it gave a command in the DSL.
Yeah.
Yeah.
let's actually find. I'm going to close this, right? And
what is the model that backs that recommendation?
It's a simple. If you like say here, I hope I'm answering your questions, right? Like when is the last time I analyzed time series data? So presumably we already have some person in mind, right? Because he already proclaimed, you know, his existence, right? So I have some user ID. So I have this data acquisitions data. This is my my data set, which tells me for every user what they have done at what point, right? In time. So there's a timestamp, there's a data type, and so forth, right? So basically, this is related to this part, right? To user data acquisitions and analysis, right? So analysis is they acquire data for acquisition or for analyzing it. This is what I mean. I separately know about the different properties of the data sets, right? So in a sense, what you see here, this data, right, for the data acquisitions, I don't need to have the name of the data type, dimensions, and so forth. I just need the action and the timestamp. You know, just need to connect the user and the data set ID, what was the action and what they were, you know, at what point they were doing. So now, am I making just a simple query? This is just a simple query. This is like data set kind of query. You can see I'm selecting what the action is analyzed. I'm selecting what the user is this guy, and then I'm sorting, you know, descendingly in time, and then I'm picking the top 3 results, right? Simple. This one here, the timeline, I think none of the timelines actually uses any machine learning methods, right? It's just a simple query and plotting.
Gotcha. Oh, okay. So when you say like plot the timeline and there's this group by here, that is something that plotting the timeline already is configured to do based on the grammar, right?
Right, because this here, it's like, what is the timeline I did data acquisition? You see, I did not specify the user, right? So basically this group by is to group by the users, right? This group by here, I don't know, can you see it? But I am grouping by the data by the user ID. So I want to produce timeline for each of the users separately.
Okay.
This is because I put, you know, I put here, even, I mean, obviously I can always have this, right? Like say, there's no reason for me not to kind of do the group by, right? I mean, I can always do the group by because why not, right? I actually do like this kind of presentation here. So even if it is one user, so what? But, you know, I mean, in this particular case, it's not going to be necessary because I already filtered with this selection here, right? I already filtered the data set to be only for this person, right? And to some extent, by the way, this is the advantage of this approach, right? I don't need to, I can actually edit the code which is generated, right? I don't need to, I messed it up here, but I don't need to do, okay, I'm not going to deal with this right now. But basically, I mean, I can edit the code, but say I can simplify it for whatever reasons. So the machine learning algorithms, when they used, this is for this recommendation, right? I might decide, I haven't implemented this for the data acquisition workflows, but imagine you make a statement, what people like me or data scientists like me have analyzed in the last week, right? Something like that.
Oh, so this is the one that I was asking with the first question. Is I want to acquire time series data?
Yeah.
Outputting that recommend data set to analyze as a recommendation, or is this just 2 separate commands? Okay, I see.
Very good question. It's a little bit up to me at this point, but right now, you see, I don't know, in a sense, you either know this person, right? And so if they have any kind of, imagine you do this, right? Right now, if they don't have any time series in the acquisitions, they never worked with time series, right? I'm just going to get the top time series, whatever this top time series data set is going to be produced, right? If they have been doing something in the past, but say 2 or 3, not like 20, right? with these 2 or 3, I'm going to put here 10 results. This is going to give me 10 results, right? So, I mean, you can see that all of this is something they have worked with in the past, right? But imagine, let me see, I don't think they have probably done 100 times series, right? At some point, if I go here, I'll start recommending, I mean, you can see I'll start recommending data sets which they haven't worked with, right? So my point is this recommender here automatically takes care of the situation when it is not very determined, right? You see, they didn't determine what kind of time series. Is it financial? Is it multi-label? Is it from the last, last 12 months, whatever, right? I mean, they haven't determined. So in a sense, I'm using a recommender system to make some kind of plausible, most likely, suggestion.
Gotcha. And that recommender is a model that lives in your service, correct?
No.
Oh.
Very good point. It can though. It can be done, but I don't do it. So right now, this is what I was saying. The cloths have no emperor, right? Actually, the only thing this knows about is how to generate this code, right? It doesn't know the recommender itself. You can see I actually uploaded it somewhere here earlier. I just created it here.
Okay, understood.
But to your point, what you are saying, right? I do actually, it is a good idea. Why not, right? It is a, sorry, browsing here. It is a good idea to, the interface itself, this engine, right? To have, maybe I can put some of these databases inside here, or I can put some of the recommenders here, right? I do have a server solution in which they're actually, let me think a little bit. No, they don't know, they're also not known in the server, but it is supposed, it can be an option. Imagine, look at this from a data privacy perspective. Imagine that there's some common data sets which everybody might know, like say in Danmarks America. But imagine you want to hook up your own data sets or from your company or whatever, which you don't know everybody to know, right? Or my service to know about. So I'm just saying, fine, you just tell me, I'm just going to, this system right now, it just generates the code for you to query your recommender. That's it, so. And this also keeps the whole design very lightweight. This is one of the advantages. Does it make sense or?
Yeah. But it also makes sense that it's extensible by the service, right? But
yeah, right. But to be honest, this also means what exactly I'm doing on the server side. And I can tell you right now, I've been actually working for this. I've been working for this data and recommenders to be on the server side, to be exactly as I described it. You have some common data sets which are known on the server, right? But there is also some data which I assume the user might have on their server. This actually is very similar to a cooking or food preparation conversational agent I'm doing. And imagine you're doing some cooking and you want to share recipes, right? And etc. You can see even the recipes here. There's some recipes between different people, but you don't want people to know what are your purchases, right? When you purchase different products, because we do need to have some inventory of your products in order to schedule, like when you say, I want to eat 10 Thai dishes in the next week or something, right? In order to we need to know your inventory of food and what we have been purchasing and etc. Some of this information you might not want to share with the others. Alternatively, some people might do want to share quite a lot of information in order to get this collaborative filtering recommendations. This right now, for me, the easiest thing to do is to have this very lightweight approach in which all of the data is all the data and recommenders and etc. is on the user side. That said, I'm not completely truthful, because what I was showing to you earlier let me see where I put it, with the IntelliJ, right? You see, this actually knows quite a lot of data. This actually already knows the data sets. It doesn't have the data sets themselves, but it does know quite a lot of metadata for the data, right? It knows the metadata types, it knows which data has been connected. It knows like say different data set names, like say, whatever is this color texture with 3-wave pattern, whatever kind of space shuttle data, whatever it is. It does know quite a lot of this, but still this is relatively lightweight. It's not, these are not the actual data sets. This is more the information I have on this side here, right? It's sorry, this, it's this information, right? The original kind of just what is the name of the data set, where it comes from, how many rows, how many columns, and so forth.
I just want to mention it's 4:30, but we can go on for sure if you don't have any.
I have time. Just sorry if I definitely made the presentation way too long, but I really like discussing the software part. So
no, yeah, I'm also down to stay. If everyone, I mean, of course, if you have to leave, you can leave. But we have time. I have time.
Great. Yeah. So much of this, since I'm in this preaching mode right now, much of these designs here, unfortunately, they're like spread out all over, right? And to some extent, I make a grant system of computational workflows, but I don't want to impose people who want to do latent semantic analysis. They don't need to have, say, install packages for doing, say, classification or quantile regression or whatever it is. And because of this, I try to, I'm kind of separating many of this in these modules. They're like, say, individual puzzle elements, which can be put together, but they can function separately. That said, some of this they do get dependent on each other. Like some of the things I was showing earlier here, like say the DSL design, and I'm sorry, I'm switching between different, like to dark mode, but I do know that there are certain, certain elements and modules about error handling, about, fuzzy matching, whatever, right? How to be handled with the different languages, like what are the common phrases in English, like which are common across everything, right? Like say, plot the last result or plot the pipeline or whatever. These are kind of common phrases which are across all of this machine learning workflows I'm considering, or computational workflows I'm considering. Now, when I program a particular package, right? Like say for data queries or for quantile regression or recommendations, I can concentrate on this is a domain specific language, right? I don't need to kind of go overboard, right? I actually have a very limited set of words, commands, and grammars to deal, concrete grammars to deal with. And, at least in principle, I can relatively quickly make a minimal viable product for all of this, to bring something to become useful. So that said, there's a package about the package which parses the numbers, right? That package is actually, it kind of embodies all of these elements here. Like if I want to do, let me see, can I do this easily? And I'll, so I'm going to use a command which parses Greek numbers, right? And ideally, I'm going to, and at least the Greek letters should be familiar to everyone because of science, mathematics, and whatnot, right? And so you can see this is here my server solution, right? So this should tell me, if you believe me here, but this should tell me that, okay, this number was being, whatever number was specified is that. If I want to do something else, right? Like say, let's use English, right? So if I say 23, right? This should, okay, something got wrong.
Don't you need the like %20 as the space?
That's well, in principle, this should. I goofed off with something here, I guess, but yeah, well, I don't know. I'm not. Yeah, fine. Instead of doing that, right? Because as I'm not going to fiddle with it, I actually have a better way of showing this. There should be some in my I do actually have a server-side solution somewhere here, and I'm going to try to find it. So. And anyway, this, so CRO example, there should be another CRO, workflow translations, right? So this here, these functions, if you look at them, right, they're very simple. They're just kind of, if I give some string, they're just doing what you said, right? They're going to make this URL encode, right? Whatever, you know, if I show you what URL encode does, it's doing what you just suggested, right? So if I say 20 and 3, right? I mean, it's just going to put this percent signs and etc., right? And if I have some kind of other elements, right? I mean, knows how to do proper encoding. Now this goes to a certain server, right? So there's no package installation here, and apparently, just a moment. I might have killed my service earlier, but I thought right now, well, this was supposed to work, right? At some point, this, you know, if you choose to believe me, worked. Okay, it works now, right? And so you can see sometimes Mathematica gets too lazy, but basically this is what we discussed right earlier. Like this takes certain command and makes this interpretation. It tells me, you know, I can specify the programming language here, right? I can also, you know, do some other stuff like that. Now this is about data wrangling, right? But it, like say for this numeric word forms, right? Now Mathematica knows how to do this, but it does it with something called semantic import, and it's very slow, right? I mean, much slower than this. So if it, yeah, well, or whatever, right? Semantic interpretation. And so the other thing is, but if I actually use Apple, right? 1203. Oh, no, didn't happen. Oh. 1203. Yeah, you see, this basically just automatically converted it. Now, the thing is that I can do this with other languages. This particular package I'm talking about, right, which I have implemented, which is on my server, it works not just with English, but works with other languages. And one of the big challenge about first of all, it's always useful to kind of for the things we're discussing, it's always useful to kind of see what is exactly going to happen if you use other languages. But the other is, but there is no, I mean, I need to, you can see, for example, here, I've been dealing with different languages, Bulgarian, Greek, Japanese, so forth, right? Knowing how to parse them and knowing how to interpret them. Some of this is not trivial. Some of this, they have quite a lot of similarities. You know, if I show you how I do this, they're very similar, but some of them it actually do have quite a lot of differences. And now Japanese and Korean and Chinese, for example, they use powers of 4, not powers of 3, right? Like say they have 10,000s and 10,000s of 10,000 and etc. One of the very interesting things for me is how do I interpret, when I say multi-language support, ideally somewhere here, this is going to show all of these numbers here, right? How they interpreted and the corresponding languages are being recognized. I'm not specifying the language here. I did actually automatically recognize which language has been used for what kind of number. This, in order to make all this work, right? I mean, first of all, I need to know localization. I need to know what are the different, what are the common elements between the different languages when they specify word forms. But then I also do need to produce quite a lot of tests. And you can see this, all of these languages, they do have, you know, I have prepared tests for all of them. So this is more or less when I say this package embodies all of the elements of which are spread out in the other computational elements package. Interpreting numeric word forms, there is some grammar here. You cannot just do information retrieval, for example. You can tell me that for data acquisition, oh, I just need to recognize time series. There is no reason to recognize the actual grammar, right, structure and the sentence of the structure. If you know what's about, say, recommendation, you find the word recommendation in the whole sentence, and you find the phrase time series and hierarchical and something, right? Then you can, you don't need to do a grammar parsing itself. Well, yeah, but, when we do have this introspection comments, right? What I have done or what I have taken from between March and May and etc. Or when it comes to time series, financial time series or healthcare time series. I mean, again, actually the semantics and the grammars, this is the only meaningful way to do it. So, I am using this kind of approach, as I said, like, figuring out the commonalities, spreading out the actual interpretations across different languages, and making lots of unit tests for the functionalities. All right, this was long, kind of. I mean, but this, I think, it answers at least some of your questions, Kevin, about the part of the server side.
Yeah. Was that your section 4, or are we just about to start?
Yeah. This is yeah, correct. Okay. Section 4 was this server solution and package example with all ideas. This is what I just discussed. The server solution, if you want, I can show it to you. The server solution, it's twofold, right? I do have this comprehensive translation grammar. So this, if I have this this Raku package, just a moment. Raku package, which has all of these packages we're discussing. We can see recommended workflows, data query workflows, data acquisition workflows, classification, and so forth, right? This numerical word forms, this is what I just discussed. So you have, this package knows about all of them. It knows how to select. If I show you this here, I think I'm in the parsing, just a moment, should be this one. Yeah, so and if I run this code, right, this is going to, for each of these commands, they're very eclectic, right? They come from different ways, about recommendations, about data wrangling and etc., right, and blah blah. So you can see that for all of this, it kind of knows how to generate the code. This is for cooking, like I want to eat Greek protein lunch, right? This produces this, and then for some of the others, like like the actual data wrangling and etc., right? They're basically here. Now, after I have done this, I have this CRO service, right? CRO is a package in Raku, which lets me make this makes these deployments. So what I was showing you earlier with translate numeric, right, which was here in this part, right? You see this sub-numeric, right? If I show you this, it should be, let me see, this should be DSL interpretation URL, right? So you see how it combined it with the translate and numeric. This thing is being given, where is this now? Yeah, this thing is being, after basically figures out. Sorry if I'm saying something which is obvious, but my point is this here realizes, okay, fine, this is a numeric thing, right? Numeric service I want to do. And I want to figure out, can I translate this to numeric word form or from numeric word form? This basically figures out how to spell out words. If I was using this, my command here, I'm going to copy it down. If I actually say a number, right? Ideally, this is going to generate the corresponding. Yeah, well, it didn't work, but whatever. It was supposed to figure out some of these elements here, how to be concretely lined up, right? Like it's supposed to figure out automatically what you want to do, and this is happening here, right? Like if I am using this DSL module and data query workflows, I'm using them in order to speed up the parsing. But even if I don't specify them, this should be able to figure out what it is about data acquisition workflows, right? And so, and this is what big part of this, of what this package is doing. It knows how to do general translations. This general translations is this monster command to DSL code, which goes through all of the, it basically cycles through all of these packages here and tries to figure out which grammar fits the most, you know, the thing that, and automatically tries to guess it. So this is my server solution. I have an automatic guessing mechanism, which goes through all of the possible grammars. With all of these grammars, one of this is going to give me the least amount of residuals, or the least amount of non-parsed characters, right? I mean, ideally I have 0 non-parsed characters, but my point is, even if I have some mistake and some misspelling and etc., this should be able to figure out, oh, okay, well, we're picking the grammar which has, you know, the most, it basically is the most exhaustive. And then after we have picked the grammar, we actually go ahead and generate the code. One of the things I'm careful about is what, if I imagine you want to do search query, like the way you put search queries in Google, right? With all the pluses and quotes around the words and etc., right? This actually, it's way too permissive. So I actually try to exclude it. It's my latest grammar to try. And here, you know, basically I have all this kind of hooks for the different grammars, how they can be, how the concrete functions for parsing and code generation, right? How they're hooked up. And so to basically what's happening, you can see this data acquisition workflow. I made a separate package. After I made this separate package, which knows how to do data acquisitions, I hooked it up here. I proclaim it to this package. And now I'm basically, when I use this mathematical cells, I'm calling this DSL code function, right? This monster function I was talking about. I'm calling this to DSL code thing. And I basically I hope that this system, you know, basically can recognize those grammars and produce the results. So this is my server solution. Right now I'm using DigitalOcean for this. I don't know if you heard about this service, but yeah, this is on the, I'm using, right. I have a server on the DigitalOcean. This is where I'm running the whole thing, so. And
your server is Raku based?
What?
Your server is Raku based?
Correct. This, okay. You can see this crow, right?
Okay, gotcha.
Is Raku. The guy who does this, he actually, he is he's one of the founders of this company, Eduman, right? And the crow service, I mean, he has pretty comprehensive documentation. I haven't tried all the advanced use cases, but what I have tried so far, right, it works just fine. This syntax highlighting here, what you see of Raku, is made by the same guy. It's called John. His name is Jonathan Worthington, you know, so yeah, he's programmed that. So as I said, it's like, the setup I have, right, is just, I'm saying just, you know, this crow, whatever, I'm saying I want to use this library of mine because I do want to return JSON results, right? Like say, what is this producing here, right? If I show you the result should be JSON code, right? I mean, I'm not sure. No, I'm lying to you. Oh, no, it is a JSON code. Yes, it is JSON code. I don't know, can you see this? But this is basically the JSON format, right? The actual codes and the user IDs and whatnot. And so, so back to this. Basically, this is what I need it for, right? So you can see after I have guessed the grammars and parsed it, right? It's being the output format is JSON. It's being marshaled or whatever into JSON, right? And I give to this crow service. This is what is the result. So
yeah, feels like you could just make this explicit, no? The grammar parsing, like instead of having to guess and based off the residuals.
Correct. This is what I was doing earlier, right? So basically, when I say but these grammars are self-aware. It's exactly this. I can specify the target Julia data frames.
Gotcha.
I mean, Julia data frames is a target. So, but imagine you said just Julia. It can be anything with Julia, right? No, but for my point is that, yeah, these pipelines here, they're somewhat self-aware, right? You can say, I want DSL mode to be, you know, my DSL mode to be not Julia data frames. So because Julia data frames is a concrete localization in the data transformation queries, right? Query workflows. I can say DSL module classification, right? Or whatever, right? Now this is not going to work then because Julia, you know, Julia, this is wrong. But yes, I mean, this explicitness, what you're talking about, it can be, it is being followed, and you know, this actually, it's one of the ways to speed up the computations.
Exactly, because like right now you have to guess through all of those possible combinations, right?
But it's not, I mean, I'm basically trying to convince you here. This DSL pick, right? If it figures out somewhere here, it should figure out this get DSL spec, which it's in a different package. But this get DSL spec, if it knows what it's, you know, if it is a specific kind of implementation, it is going to utilize it. Let me see here, just a moment. So here, when I do the picking, right? Somewhere here there is a loop, right? And before going to this loop, I'll try to kind of do this much quicker. So hopefully I can locate it. I should know my code better, I guess. But all right, so the module itself, right? So this here, yeah, basically this is it, right? If I have specified that, if I have made my specification of what is the DSL, right? I don't need to make the picking, right? I already know what exactly this is going to be, and I'm going to utilize it directly. Otherwise, as you say, I need to cycle for all of these languages and etc. Right? So I mean, why do that, right? The other is that obviously I don't need to cycle for all of them, because if I get zero with one of them, if I get zero residual with one of them, right, I might stop.
I see.
The question is, what, imagine you have some grammar which is valid in several of your, you know, say for recommendations and, you know, related semantic analysis, it might be valid in both, right? So then what exactly you do? This, I mean, to some extent, kind of, I mean, so what? The thing is what, Raku right now, the regular expression parser, right, which is the main tool here, it's actually 10 to 100 times slower than what is in Perl, in the classical Perl. It's just not optimized enough. But if it was optimized, right, then we're not even going to be discussing this kind of, you know, speed thing, because they usually supposed to happen fairly quickly, right? I mean, basically, yeah. But yes, I'm not just cycling all the way through, right? I mean, I do actually verify, but you know, the DSL languages or targets have been specified, and some of the specifications here, they're supposed to help. But if somebody specified a concrete, right, just the target, right? Can I guess from the target itself, from this kind of target specification, can I guess the actual module, right? The actual module which is being utilized. There's several tricks like this which I'm utilizing, and yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, it can be optimized somewhat more, but at this point, I consider it good enough. So, again, in this package, I was talking about the numeric forms. This is more or less what is happening here when it's trying to guess the language, right? So language can be specified, but if the language is not specified, then it's going to cycle through different. It's going to go through the different languages, right, and try to guess it. Now, this langs and L, right, is basically the different languages. And I think it starts, it basically starts with English, because say English is the most frequent language, but basically, yeah, it tries to specify this, and you can see if this was completely parsed, right, it stops. With languages, I consider them to be different enough, right? Some numbers might be the same in two languages, which I need to see this examples like that. But for the languages, I know they just don't overlap. Meaning, if you parse a certain word form in some language, like say Bulgarian or Russian or Spanish or whatever, it's just in that language. It's not a valid word form in any of the others. So this is what is happening here. This, this basically. This loop goes through all possible languages, but then if it actually successfully parses one of them, it stops. Okay, this was like too much, some technical, trivial maybe, but
On the, I mean, if you still have time, I still have questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
On a more practical standpoint, like in terms of adoption, are you looking for, is this like something that is the backbone for your for your projects for work, or is this something you want to be adopted by like just somebody who's like, hey, get me 10 Thai recipes for this week? Or is it the programming interface for your work? Like what's yeah,
very good question. So I personally make this kind of packages. I mean, some of my former students or former coworkers, they said, oh, well, let's make a business, or let's try to make this as a, some kind of, commercial solution. And I'm saying, look, I mean, for me, the commercial application, I work as a consultant, right? For me, the commercial application is always there. I'm doing this because it speeds up my work, right? I mean, with my consultancies, this actually, it is useful. It's one of the things I'm using. It is for this, right? So it is. Now, I do fair amount of teaching and fair amount of, like say, online lectures. So this data sets, which are like say, to have a recommender for some generic or well-known data sets, it's very useful. But imagine I want to do that for some concrete, for some, say for my, for some of my clients. Yeah, I mean, I do want to use, some big data sets first. And second, I do want to be able to hook up, like say, different type of databases to it. Right now, the conversational agents, I have used them a lot to generate code for latent semantic analysis and recommenders, right? This is basically one of the things I'm doing quite a lot. Also, quantile regression. So quantile regression, I don't know to what degree, say you might be interested or care or whatever, and hopefully I'm not being obnoxious here, but for example, one of the things I'm doing, right, with quantile regression is to, just a moment, like this was in a previous, presentation for the, Shiny, sorry, not Shiny, Meetup, right? It was about.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. So this was a Meetup in January or February this year in Champaign-Urbana. I lived in Champaign-Urbana working for Wolfram, right? So this was a Meetup, data scientist Meetup for that area, from from the University of Illinois area. And so I was making this, I was talking about anomaly detection, right, with say whatever kind of systems, right, and etc. So this particular thing, what you see here, right, like say whatever I have here, right, I mean different, I mean I have discussed these examples previously in the Orlando machine learning data science, but some of this, instead of like, I can share the code with you, right? I mean, I can show the code, but first of all, some of this here, right? Like say finding this anomalies and etc. If I actually put together the actual code, right? Like say I have my quantile regression object, I find the outliers, and here is the plot, right? I mean, this is very concise and usually very well understood definition. Making this, but even that code, when I talk to say managers and coworkers, collaborators, it might be a little bit too much of programming code. I can make this easily to be with natural language commands, right? I mean, it basically this kind of fill in or whatever. It just simple to do. Now, I do use this kind of this type of transformations or figuring out some of this, like this is how I use my packages. So the natural language commands interface is because I very rarely can stay only in one system, right, and be productive. In a sense, for whatever reasons, I need to use more than just right, more than just saying mathematics or whatever. And so, yeah, being actually having this kind of cross-platform, cross-package, actually cross, like, as I said, they have like several packages that do that, right? For me, this is kind of beneficial. So for me, the practically speaking, just makes me faster to do my projects as a consultant. Now, can it be used otherwise? Yeah, of course. But this is where these books I was talking about, which I'm writing, it comes into play. They do having this actually really simplifies my writing. And otherwise, you can easily get lost in code, right? What exactly you're doing here in order to achieve what, So do it make sense? Or?
Yeah, I agree. So I've been working on an open source framework recently, not my own project, but I've been contributing. And it's the same philosophy in that there's a DSL that maps to it's meant for Python languages. So it maps to Pandas, Spark, or Dask. So all the Python frameworks, and the DSL is SQL based, right? But with keywords extended. And I asked this question because one, like in terms of adoption, you hear the same thing where it's like they don't really want to try a new tool because they want to stick in their comfort zone, right? Or it's like for some people, it's like they want to get like Spark on the resume or something like that.
Right. Yeah, so really the target audience is different. This here, what you're asking me right now, right? I really don't know. Sometimes you need way too much marketing for some of this in order to become successful. From another perspective, if it has quite a lot of mileage, right, it is useful. Granted, maybe just useful for me and for nobody else, but nevertheless, as I said, I try to use them. I mean, I'm not doing it just because I like doing it. I mean, I like, but I do have some, a practical element always, for this. So
yeah, but in the project I'm working on, because it's all Python based, we can share unit tests across the frameworks that we're building for. But in your case, where you have to build a unit test suite in the different languages that you're supporting, it's so much work to keep. One, to build out the tests in different languages, but more importantly, consistent behavior from your DSL, right? Because like in the DSL snippet that you shared earlier, Pandas specifically had the copy. Why does it have the copy? Because Pandas does in-place operations, right? A lot. Whereas like other languages are immutable. Their data structures are immutable, right? So you're always getting a new data frame back. So the testing, like I feel the architecture that you went with makes the testing particularly painful here compared to if you use maybe like, and that's why I was asking about like SymPy or like using mapping Mathematica to Python code, because
very good point. And to some extent, first of all, yes, I do try to tell people to bring tests, and this actually, even in this, let me just go to this again, like the package I was mentioning, but the numerical word forms, right, which is which embodies quite a lot of the ideas, right? One of the things, because people get interested and about collaborating, and one of the things I'm saying is that the easiest thing for them to collaborate with me is to actually commit new test files for the language they know, right? Like say, because even some of the languages I know well, they're not, meaning not say English, Bulgarian, Russian, right? I can actually, it's a little bit harder for me to figure out the actual, the actual mispronunciations, or also common forms, which I don't know about. But if people actually do make tests, right, I can usually figure out from the tests they have committed what is going on. To some extent, this concern about testing, it's very valid, but that's why I do things first in Mathematical R. So definitely both Mathematica and R, right? No question, right? Meaning I am using two languages, no question, right? After that, for me, it's not that hard to kind of see how I should do it, say in Python or Julia, right? And also, at least in principle, people can see what this system is multi-language, right? It's not the unit tests, no question. They can be very hard. Right now, for me, although that's important, right? Like for example, implementations to work in Python, it's not the most important thing for me, right? And so I usually target Mathematica and R just because Mathematica and R, I know them very well. And also right now with R, especially in the projects I'm involved, right? Usually I'm like this kind of senior data scientist. Everyone say younger than 35, you know, like programs in Python. And most of the time when they hire me or when they want my, you know, my kind of input, this is for the things they don't know how to do, right? And so in a sense, I'm already using a complementary system to begin with, right? You know, so I'm already using, say, our Mathematica or whatever. So
yeah,
anyway, this was a little bit, but I am targeting computational workflows in general, not just data science. Right, like for example, imagine like what you are describing in the last meeting. I was actually thinking, well, actually, I can make a conversational agent for this, right? I can make conversational agent for that workflow, and actually show it to you, right? At least in principle, you can actually say, look, this you got it. Even if you don't use it, just as a brainstorming technique or as a learning technique, right? It is already somewhat useful, and in many ways, this is what my conversational agent designs go for, right? After I have made the conversational agents, so they're all kind of made in some initial stages. They need to be specialized, or I can tell people, look, I can specialize it for your particular problem domain. But since we have a conversational agent, we already can discuss it in that way. They actually, this forces them to make an actual formulation, right? To make an actual okay, this is the commands I want, say healthcare, right? How many people in the medical world, you know, can get cold blue with high probability in the next 2 hours or something like that, right? Or whatever, right? I mean, or like say, how many people, or, you know, had sepsis, you know, got sepsis in the last month in the hospital, stuff like that. Imagine you actually make this kind of, you know, like, usually I can force them, but this is one of the ways to get people to communicate, right? Because like, imagine you have this, you know, conversational agent. Can you actually describe what you're doing, you know, like with simple commands, like it's smart enough to understand it. This actually is a very good starting point, and, you know, can, in my opinion, at least, it can go pretty far, even if it doesn't become a conversational agent at the end. Just the way that you are making your architecture to be amenable for conversational agents, you already introduce quite a lot of qualities, as you say, testing, unit testing, you know, figuring out APIs and so forth.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Okay.
Like, I mean, and I mean, for example, I am a little bit, I have something else to do, right? But say 2 weeks ago, whenever you had your presentation, I was thinking, actually, this is exactly the type of machine learning workflows, which if they can be sped up with conversational agents, it's exactly this, right? Instead of like, because at some point you need to show how you hook up the code, right? In Python and etc., right? But imagine that I cannot automate 100% what you're doing, but I can automate, I don't know, like say 40% or 60% of what you're doing. Then this, just with this, right? Then this immediately becomes useful. Again, I'm not targeting people off the street, so to speak, or random users, right? This is, you know, so I usually target myself and the engineers in the projects first, and then this can be extended a little bit further, say to include managers and testers. Especially for the testing, I can, with this kind of commands, like if I make some sequence of commands, like say, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of going on and on, but if I can make this sequence of commands for the unit tests, right? They can easily, I mean, it's not this, but they can easily make some, I mean, I can make, the quality assurance engineers, they don't need to program that much. They just need to follow through with a sequence of commands. Did they parse or not, right? Did this produce the right result or not, right? This kind of stuff. And so that's actually much easier than, making some of the unit tests otherwise, right? So in a sense, I'm using natural language to specify, workflows and what kind of outcomes they should get.
Yeah, I agree. I agree that the previous presentation is extensible, right? If you say like, define this workflow, schedule it every week at 9 a.m., right?
Yeah.
That's something very parsable, right?
Yeah. So this is one of the things I like. Imagine I actually say, first of all, imagine this, if this is a marketing talk right now, I'm getting you interested in this, right? But even to some extent, the server solution is needed, because you see, you don't need to install all of these packages and etc. With this kind of server solution, you can get a hint of what you're trying to do. I mean, you can get a hint on your phone, right? This is the idea. And that's actually not that hard. And from my perspective, if I say engage someone, like say you, right? I mean, you can just tell me a bunch of, say, 20 commands or something like that, right? Or 20 dialogues you might see. And I just can tell, look, I mean, we can very quickly program some of this, some of these dialogues and some of these commands take 2 hours. Some of this, they take 2 weeks, right? But we can also have the low-hanging fruits, so to speak, right? And so here, let me try to. So this is the cooking conversational agent, right? With this former student of mine, one of the things I asked her to do is to basically put together different commands, right? I mean, I want to cook today. What do you need? I mean, again, imagine instead of cooking, it's acquiring, right? Acquiring. And instead of eating is acquiring, instead of cooking is analyzing. And instead of, dishes, cuisine, or whatever, we're talking about data sources, right? And so basically, yeah, we list all of this different type of commands. After that, I basically, I program against it. And some of this very relatively easy to figure out. Now, in this particular case, after this was created, right? I basically, one of the things I would like to mention here, right, is that if I go to say this food preparation conversational agent, it has quite a lot of similarities with the data acquisition or some of the other grammars, right? This ingredient query, it's the same as variables. Introspection query, it's the same as introspection query, right? Recommendation, they're kind of very similar. I actually even explicitly kind of stated it, right, in some of these workflows of mine. Like I actually was very interested to kind of see, can I actually leverage this in some explicit way, right? So somewhere here, I do have like this analogy in which, so the concrete phrases are being replaced. I'm very interested in transferring the design elements, right? So I usually, after I solve in one of these packages or in one of these workflows, if I solve certain, problem, I can relatively easily, kind of scale it. Now, that's it, right? Obviously, for the different, I mean, like say, generating random data, we're not exactly generating random dishes, but the data quality query, right? If the data, making queries for data quality that assure certain data quality, although we usually don't check for the quality of the food, because, but I can see very easily in some restaurants and etc., or in some places, but they might have some devices which actually do check for the freshness and quality and whatnot of food. So my point is that in general, this is very fruitful kind of fruitful approach to see what are the analogies between the different elements. And food preparation, it's very easy to understand by everyone, but any kind of small business, you have recipes, you have inventory, you have things you want to do with these recipes, and you want to plan ahead. So one of the easiest things to, and why I'm telling you all this, one of the easiest things to automate with machine learning is machine learning workflows. This is the model. And so from my perspective, it's just do I use Raku? Do I use, say, Java? Because Java, say, Antler, right? Do you use some other kind of parsing mechanisms? Like for years, I was using Mathematica actually to make grammars. It's just Raku has such a convenient way of maintaining the grammars. It's like, it's something I cannot ignore. It's very elegant, very nice, and use this. I can maintain easily large grammars with Raku. So this is the reason I'm using that. But I'm also not particularly married for Raku. Many of these grammars, I can relatively easily transfer them to something else, like say Java or Python.
Yeah. Okay, I'll stop the recording here.
Yeah.